This Thursday, 12 September 2019 hearing officer meeting is called to order. Good morning. I am Los Angeles County staff member Gina Natoli. I am the hearing officer on all agenda items today. I'd like to go through a few administrative items. Please turn off or silence all electronic communication devices. If you'd like to follow along with the proceedings for today, there are agendas available in the back of the room. There are established time limits for testimony on hearing officer agenda items. Petitioners have up to 10 minutes for their initial presentation and 5 minutes for a rebuttal period. Respondents will have 10 minutes each. All others will have 2 minutes each, and there is no ceding of time. Anyone wishing to testify today on any agenda item, and that includes the public comment period, must fill out a speaker card and submit it to staff in the back of the room. There is an audio and video recording being made of today's proceedings, and it will be available on the Department of Consumer and Business Affairs website within 10 business days. Is anyone aware of anyone here today who may need translation services? Seeing none, I'm moving on. I just wanted to inform you about the general procedure for today's agenda items, how things go. First, staff makes a brief presentation, and then the petitioner speaks. Next, I will ask the respondent to speak, and after that, anyone else will be called up to speak. If necessary, after everyone has testified, I will bring the petitioner back up for a rebuttal period. Final decisions made by hearing officers on landlord petitions which do not assess an administrative penalty, and final decisions on all tenant petitions are final and are not subject to further administrative appeal at the county. If you intend to testify today on any agenda item, and that includes the public comment period, I'm going to ask that you stand at this time to be sworn in. Even if you're not sure you're going to speak, I ask that you please stand to be sworn in. Being sworn in does not obligate you to speak, but it saves time. Okay. Will you please raise your right hand? And do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Please answer yes or no. Thank you very much. You may be seated. I will be taking, thank you, the agenda items in order today. We're moving on to part 2, public hearing items, starting with item 2, case RSQ 1909312. Ms. Lewis, please proceed.
This is for interim rent stabilization ordinance petition for compliance, RSQ 1909312. The petitioner is Andrea Ola, who is the tenant, and the respondent is Ellie H. Anderson Jr., who is the landlord. The petition was filed on August 5th, 2019. The property address is 2615 Lake Avenue, Apartment 3, Altadena, California, 91001. And they are requesting a reduction in rent in accordance with the ordinance number 2018-0045. The property is located in the unincorporated area of Altadena in Los Angeles County, and it is a residential dwelling on a property with 2 or more units. It was also built in 1963. Here, I just want to address the key issues in this petition. The rent was increased from $1,793 to $1,993, and that was effective April 1st, 2019. This was done through a new rental agreement provided to the tenant. and the tenant was expected to pay the increase on the same day that she received the rent increase. So in this instance, the rent increased $200, and the tenant was not aware of that prior to having received the new rental agreement, but was expected to pay that amount, which I'll address in just one moment. The total increase is in the amount of 11.15%. So that includes the 3% that is allowed. And per the effective date of the rent increase, the April through September 2019 rent payments will be due by today's date, the hearing date. So that's a total of 6 months of paying the additional amount in excess of the 3%. Just going back to the 11.15%, the landlord in this instance should have provided the tenant with at least a 60-day notice because the rent was being increased over 10%. The petitioner returned the proof of service to DCBA on August 12th and declared that a copy of the petition had been sent to the respondent, and we mailed out a copy of a notice of hearing to both the respondent and the petitioner on August 27, 2019. DCBA reached out to the landlord on 3 occasions. Back on August 6th, DCBA contacted the landlord in hopes to counsel the landlord on the ordinance. We did not get an answer, so we went ahead and left a voicemail, but the call was not returned. The same thing occurred on August 20th, 2019, and then we made a final attempt on September 3rd, 2019, and again, the same thing occurred where we reached out in hopes to counsel the landlord also to see if we can get the increase rescinded, but the landlord did not answer the call and left a voicemail. I do want to add for this case that there is another petition that was filed with DCBA where we did reach out to the landlord for that case as well, and we did have intention to speak to the landlord regarding the ordinance during that time about both cases. None of those calls have been returned outside of the dates that I mentioned from previously. So at this time, staff is recommending approval of the interim rent stabilization petition for noncompliance, case number RSQ19-09312. According to the ordinance, the tenant's maximum allowable rent should be $1,846.79. That's the base rent plus the 3%. And if this petition is approved and the tenant has paid the requested increase, then the landlord respondent will need to credit the tenant for any overpayments above 3% that have occurred since the rent increase took effect, which we calculated out to be a total of $877.26 for the months of April through September 2019. If the landlord is electing to do a lump sum credit option, it would be to return back the $877.26. If the landlord wants to do a 6-month credit option, it would be to return back $146.21 over the 6 months. And either of these options would begin on October 1st, 2019. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. So you've had no communication with the landlord since the staff report?
Correct.
All right. And has the landlord submitted a petition for relief from moratorium?
No.
All right. Then I am opening the public hearing for item 2, and I call the petitioner, Andrea Ola and Estuardo Ola. Come on down front. You may go ahead and take a seat. Either chair, doesn't matter. There's a little counter on the table in front of you. It's going to be set for 10 minutes. When you start speaking, that green light will come on. When you have 30 seconds left, the yellow light will come on. So when you see that yellow light, just wrap up your comments if you could, and when the red light comes on, your time has stopped. You would both have up to 10 minutes, not 10 minutes each, but the 10 minutes for both of you. You don't have to use the entire time. That's completely up to you. So If you would, please just state your name for the record before you begin speaking. Please go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Estuardo Ola. I'm here because my rent, as mentioned before, was raised by 11.1%, $200 a month. We tried talking to him. He didn't answer, and he also doesn't want to fix things in our building. We had to call the health department to fix our plumbing. For months, it was broken, and every time we reach, he never answer or return our calls or text. We just want to fix this and, live our lives with no problems. But he doesn't want to work with us with anything in the building. And I know it's not only us, it's just other tenants too with the plumbing, with the rent increase. And yeah, I wouldn't mind maybe if he fixed the building to a good, but he doesn't. And you go.
Yes, he's never available. I also text him.
Because this is being recorded and it may need someone to type up a transcript later, I just need for you to state your name.
Yes. My name is Andrea Ola.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Yes. Every time I want to text, every time I want something to get fixed or when is he going to come to the building, he never returns my messages. He never texts back. He's never around the building at all. He never, also when we want to give the rent, he never around. We don't know who to give it to because the address that he gave us, we want to send, but they always gets returned. We don't know where he's at. And he gave us an account to give him the rent, but every time we go to the bank, they give us a hard time, like, oh, this is not your account, you can't deposit. So, like I said, he doesn't return a call, so we don't know how to communicate with him about that also.
All right, thank you very much. So you've paid $1,993. You've made 6 payments at $1,993. Is that correct? So April, May, June, July, August, and September?
We actually have the September check with us right now because, like my wife mentioned, we tried mailing it, but it got returned to us. It was certified. So the post office said that nobody went to pick it up, so we have to go pick it up. And then we asked him in a text, when is he going to be in the building for, but he never replied or text, like, we haven't seen him. So that check, I have it with me since September 1st, but we don't know how to give it to him because he gave us 2 different addresses. One of them, the post office said doesn't exist. The second one, nobody was there, so the check got returned to us.
So the September payment, you sent certified return receipt, and it came back to you.
Came back, yeah, because they don't deliver if nobody signs for it. So it got sent back to the post office. We had to go pick it up.
All right, thank you. I don't have any other questions for you. Please go ahead and take your seats. I'll be calling the next speaker.
Thank you.
Ellie Anderson. Good morning, sir. Same rules apply. Just go ahead and take a seat. Make sure you watch the yellow and the red lights. And just state your name for the record before you begin, sir.
My name is Ellie H. Anderson, Jr.
Go ahead, sir. Thank you.
I have a lease from March 30th, 2018, to March 31st, 2019. I was informed by the tenant that they were moving out 30 days before their lease was up. That lease was for $1,793. I received a call about a week before the 30 days was up, maybe not that long, that he would like to stay in the unit. And I said, okay, you have added another person to your lease. You've had a child since then. I have to raise your rent to compensate for 6 people living in a 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment. And I was really, didn't want to do this, but he begged to stay. I said, well, it will cost you another $200. I have to raise your rent to $19.93 to come in the same focus with the other tenants that are paying that much. In other words, his rent for $17.93 plus 2% or whatever, 3% would not compensate for the new lease and to compensate with other tenants in the unit, which I have to pay. And these people raise their prices. They raise their prices for garbage, for water, for lights, for repairs especially, maintenance. I have a note that I have to pay. I have to pay insurance. And if I do not pay these bills, if I don't have the money to do that, the whole building is just out of my reach. I cannot afford it. So I have to have a reasonable amount, which is the $19.93, to go along with what the other tenants are paying. Also, every time I turn around, every month, there's a call. My plumbing is out of whack. Of course it's out of whack. You got 4 kids, and they're getting into the tub with all kind of stuff. Same thing with the kitchen. I've spent, since this man has been there, just on plumbing, over close to $900, maybe even more, just on plumbing. I can't afford it. And I told him, in your lease, there's a clause that states you pay for drainage stoppage. And he agreed. He has the lease, and he agreed that when he signed the lease, that's what he had to do. I have the lease here where he signed, and I can even read it for you. Tenant agrees to pay for all utilities and services based upon the occupancy of the premise. And number 14, tenant shall be responsible for keeping the garbage disposal clean, chicken bones, toothpicks, matchsticks, celery grease, vegetable ties, and all plumbing fixtures that may need to be cleaned of stoppage, and for expenses or damages caused by the I'm kind of nervous, so please, stopping of waste pipes or overflows from bathtubs, wash basins, toilets, or sinks. Tenant shall properly use and operate all furniture, fixtures, and appliances, electricity, plumbing, fixtures, and all keep them clean as sanitary conditions permit. And he's responsible to pay those. Drains cleaning up. He has been late with his payments. I have proof of all of his checks here. I have printed them out from November. He was late. December, he was late. January, late. February, late. February, he paid on time. No, I'm sorry. He paid the late fee on February, not for the other days that I'm naming, November, December, January. March and April paid. May was late. June was late. July was late. August was late. September, I have not even received a payment from this man. How do I pay my bills if I don't receive money from the tenants? I have a rent roll here, as you can see. I can show it to you. These other tenants, what they pay, and his rent is comparable to them. And let's see, as far as being around the building, I come there every week, maybe 2 or 3 times to clean up after these people, clean up their dirty diapers that they throw out the garbage out their car onto the ground. I put one back up on the car. The next week is over in the corner somewhere. I got to go and pick it up. Sometimes I do most of my maintenance as far as cleaning up around the building. And anyways, if I don't pay my bills, if I don't have the money to pay them, and he agreed to his new lease of $200 raise, and he knew that. I didn't beg him to stay there and accept this contract. It's a legal contract. With any government agency you want, they will tell you the same thing. So that's all I have to say, and I would like to keep the rent at what it is, $1,993. I would like for them to pay their rent on time so I won't have to call them, chase them. And as far as the notice was put on my car on August 26, because I guess they sent it certified. I don't accept certified anything. I'm not home. I'm at the unit trying to clean it up. So when the mailman comes, he leaves a notice. I'm not going to chase around trying to find the mailman. If it's first-class mail, I get it. And all of his notices should be in writing, not on the phone or whatever. I don't keep notes. I'm driving or whatever. I can't respond to this thing. Anyway, that's the way I feel, and that's the way my legal point is that the rent is justified. How do I pay my bills if I can't raise my rent when other people are raising their bills and whatever on me? Thank you very much.
Mr. Anderson, thank you. I just have a couple of questions for you. How long have you been a landlord?
I bought that building in 1977, April. So that's 42 years.
And you're aware of the state mandated notice periods for rent increases?
As far as the 3%, I understand that...
No, sir. Just when you are going to raise rent, you understand that there's a state mandated notice period that you have to give your tenants?
Yes, I do give my tenants notices. But like I said, this man walked up to me and said, look, I would like to stay here. That was not a notice. Well, it was a notice. He sent his 30-day notice.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. I'm going to call the petitioner back for rebuttal. So, Mr. and Mrs. Ola, if you would like to come back down, and if there's anything you would like to add, you have, since you are the petitioner, you are allowed a rebuttal period. You can respond to anything that Mr. Anderson has said that you think is important for my deliberations.
Yes, I would like just to add that, yes, we were gonna move, but it was 2 weeks before that I asked him if it was okay us to stay. I did not beg for him. I just asked if it was okay because I know that I already have given my notice, but I asked, so he said it was fine. I wasn't aware of the 3% that it has to be, so we agreed to it. And when we found out, we talked about it, but then he hung up on me. And he said that he's not gonna talk to me, and then he hung up, and he stopped taking my calls. And we do have 3 kids, 11, 9, and 4, and then we have a baby. That's the person that he said it was added to our lease. It's a newborn. He is right now 8 months, and we both work, so sometimes we're not in the house. The building, he doesn't come 2-3 times a week to the building. Sometimes I just didn't bring the pictures, but the trash can, it's overflowing. So that's the trash falling off the trash can that it's on the building. It's not us throwing the trash on the premises. So I have pictures. I could bring them later if you would like to see them. And the plumbing, the kids don't bring anything to the tub or in the kitchen. The plumbing stopped working by itself. And when the health department came to the building, we showed them the pictures that we have, how the water is backing on the plumbing. It was for months like that. He didn't want to fix it. And then I understand if it was something that we did, I will fix it, but it's not only my apartment with the plumbing issues. The lady next to me too, she said, my mother, this is her exact words, my mother is not a fish, because the tub was full of water and the water was not going. The lady on the front too, not even 1 month in their apartment, the plumber had to come to the building because the plumbing was already bad. I don't have any problems like paying my rent on time, but I was a few months I was holding the rent, because I was told that I could do that until he fixes the plumb. But then I pay. And like I said, my September, I have it with me. But I text him before September to ask him when is he gonna be on the building. He didn't reply. I call him, he doesn't answer the phone calls. So how am I supposed to pay the rent if he's not around? And the money is in the bank, the check is with me. The check is in the house because we have a babysitter, we both work. We told the babysitter if he comes, give him the check. He never was there. Like my wife mentioned, when we went to the Bank of America, a couple of times they kind of like, oh, you're Ellie or you're not. What is this for? So I have to explain them that it's for rent that I need to deposit. But that's what I try to give it to him better so he can take care of it, and then I just give him the check. But he's nowhere around to be, and he doesn't answer phone calls or texts or nothing. So I mean, I don't want to go to the bank and have this problem every time. That's what I was trying to mail the check, but he says he doesn't. We didn't know he doesn't receive certified. But I mean, we send it like that because so we want to make sure that he gets the check, so he signs for it to have a proof that he got the check on time. That's the reason that we send it like that. But we had to go pick it up, and since then I have it with me for the amount of $19.93 because we were told that to pay that until we got a hearing, so we get
Thank you.
And we didn't receive 60 days before that he was going to increase the rent by $200. Because I know they told us it had to be 60 days, but we didn't receive that. He just gave us the contract. We didn't know, so we signed it.
All right, thank you. Did you have anything to add, Mrs. Ola?
Just that my name is Andrea Ola. When I have a babysitter in the house, every time she comes to the house, she just keeps harassing her. If she lives here, she lives here, but she doesn't. It's just the two of us and my 4 children, and that's all.
Right. Thank you both very much. Thank you. Ms. Lewis, do you have anything to add to the testimony that's been given this morning?
I just wanted to address 2 things. The first thing is that the ordinance does not provide for an additional tenant. This is information that would have been communicated with the respondent, the landlord, had we been able to contact him. The other thing that I want to add regarding the contact is that we did also reach out to the petitioner to determine if there was another phone number that we could reach out to the landlord at, and there was nothing available. I also just want to talk about the petition process in terms of the landlord mentioning the items that he needs to pay for as a landlord. The ordinance does allow for landlords to file petitions for relief from moratorium, which would allow him to address those things in his own petition.
Thank you. Something you mentioned and is actually brought up in one of the other cases on the agenda today. You said the ordinance doesn't provide for an additional tenant. What do you mean by that?
What I mean is that the landlords are not able to increase rent even more as a result of an additional tenant occupying the unit.
Why?
It's not in the ordinance. And Jessica, do you want to speak about that?
Because I don't see anywhere in the ordinance, and I was going to discuss it on the upcoming case, but we can discuss it now. I don't see anywhere in the ordinance that a landlord is prevented from increasing rent because of additional tenants.
Sure. Hi, my name is Jessica Gallegos. In terms of the ordinance, what we want to say is the ordinance doesn't specify that landlords may increase when there's additional tenants in their property, and you are correct, it also doesn't say that they cannot, but the ordinance is essentially silent on landlords being able to increase the rent based on additional tenants.
But the ordinance is silent on all aspects of when a landlord may increase rent. What can trigger a rent increase? I don't see anywhere in the ordinance where it says if you do A, B, and C, you can raise it, which would imply then you can't raise it if you do D, E, and E. it's completely silent on that period. The only thing I read in the ordinance is 3%. 3% per year, starting with September 11th. So that is actually not germane to my decision today.
Okay.
The argument over why the rent is being raised. My authority under the ordinance is with the amount of the rent increase. And with issues with maintenance, I have no authority to command a landlord to conduct maintenance. That's another section of the Department of Consumer and Business Affairs. I only rule on whether a rent increase is allowed. Not specifically in most instances the reasons for it. So this is something that we'll have to discuss outside of a case and outside of the hearing room, is that issue of what the ordinance covers and what it doesn't. But I understand permissive ordinances. I'm a land use planner. Title 22, the zoning code, tells you what you can do in a zone. If it's not in Title 22, you cannot do it. So that's pretty cut and dried. The interim rent stabilization ordinance doesn't mention it at all. The circumstances doesn't say you can or cannot under these instances. What it says is, if you want to, these are the things that we will consider. But it doesn't say if you want to, it doesn't say tenants, you can't include that. So that's a discussion we'll have to have at another time.
Okay.
But I'd prefer, at least in the interim, that we don't use as the reason that they cannot raise the rent based on the number of people until we figure out whether that's really valid or not.
Okay, thank you, Gina.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm just making sure I have my speaker cards in the correct order, folks, for upcoming cases. All right, I'm going to go to my discussion of this item 2, the petition for noncompliance. The interim rent stabilization ordinance states, in a petition for noncompliance, the tenant shall bear the burden of proving beyond a preponderance of the evidence that the rent increase is not in compliance with the ordinance. The petitioner has met that burden. The documentation submitted by the petitioner and as reviewed by staff substantiates by a preponderance of the evidence that the petitioner's rent was increased within the last 12 months in excess of the 3% allowed by the interim rent stabilization ordinance. The landlord also has not filed a petition for relief from moratorium, which the landlord can do. I suggest that the petitioners consult with DCBA staff about whether or not you can withhold rent payment in exchange for trying to get maintenance done. I just want to make sure you're getting your information from the proper source. I'm not sure who told you you could withhold rent until maintenance was performed, but you have to be careful about these things. And landlord, Mr. Anderson, I'm going to advise you that if you are not making a fair and reasonable return on this rental property, that you consult with Department of Consumer and Business Affairs staff, because if you've had a lot of expenses and you can show that in the past year, you have not, in 2019, you didn't make as much money as you did, including inflation. In 2018, you might be authorized to raise rents more than 3%, but you have to go through a process with the Department of Consumer and Business Affairs folks to do that. So after the hearing or sometime at your convenience, I suggest that you consult with them. There's no fee for you to consult with them on that. But in this instance, I'm going to close the public hearing, and given the evidence presented before me today, I affirm the petition for noncompliance, which means I approve the petition for noncompliance for case RSQ1909312. I direct the landlord to return the excess rent paid over the last 5 months. They should be charged $17.93. That's what they should have been paying since April, not $19.93. You can either return that money in one lump sum payment of $877.26, or you can pay it back over 6 months at $146.21 a month. The petitioner's rent may be increased 3%, which would be to $1,846.79 after the state-required notice period. And again, you may submit a petition for relief from moratorium to try and increase that beyond the 3%. My findings will be issued within 20 calendar days, and item 2 is concluded. Now, we do have several more items to go over today on the agenda. So if at some point you feel you want to talk to the Department of Consumer and Business Affairs staff, you won't be able to talk to Ms. Lewis because she's going to be busy presenting these next cases, but there are other staff in the room that you could speak to about your issues today. So item 2 is concluded. We're moving on to item 3, case RSQ1908808, petition for noncompliance filed by Miguel Ruiz. Ms. Lewis, please proceed.
So as you mentioned, it's for the interim rent stabilization ordinance petition for noncompliance, RSQ1908808. The petitioner is Miguel Ruiz, who is the tenant, and the respondent is Fernando Lozoya, who is the landlord. The petition was filed back on July 25th, 2019. The property address is 1244 East 81st Street, Los Angeles, California, 90001. And they were requesting a reduction in rent in accordance with the interim rent stabilization ordinance 2018-0045. The property is located in the unincorporated area of Florence Firestone in Los Angeles County, and it is a residential dwelling on a property with 2 or more units, and it was built in 1941. I want to go over some key issues here. The rent was increased from $827 to $1,200 effective March 1st, 2019. The total increase is in the amount of 45.10%. And per the effective date of the rent increase, the March through September 2019 rent payments, so 7 months total, will be due by today's date, the hearing date. The petitioner returned the proof of service form to DCBA on July 25th, 2019, declaring that a copy of the petition was sent to the respondent. And DCBA sent out a notice of hearing on August 27, 2019. I do want to go over landlord contact because these calls in our contact with the landlord are pertinent to why today's case is here before hearing. So on July 26, 2019, DCBA contacted the landlord respondent to counsel them on their rights under the ordinance. The landlord respondent was not aware of the ordinance, but after learning of the ordinance, understood that they were responsible for returning the overpayment to the tenant, along with setting rent in accordance with the ordinance. The landlord respondent was provided with an overpayment amount during that time, and which was pulled from the base rent of September 2018. The landlord told us that they'd visit DCBA the following day for further discussion and just to think about returning back the overpayment to the tenant. During that call, the landlord also informed DCBA that they had recently purchased the property, and that's why they had increased the rent.
Could you hold on, Ms. Lewis? Excuse me, folks. Whatever conversation is going on, it's a little distracting. Thank you. Please go ahead, Ms. Lewis.
So the landlord did tell us that they would visit DCBA the following day, but they actually came in on the same day. So we counseled the landlord on his rights and responsibilities under the ordinance. And again, the landlord was aware that an overpayment needed to be returned. So at that time, the landlord actually provided a written notice to DCBA stating that they would rescind the rent increase in accordance with the ordinance. So rent would be set at no more than $851.81. And in fact, the landlord decided to just go ahead and increase it to the base rent plus 3%, which was the $851.81. And then that the overpayment of, at that time, $1,740.95 would be returned back to the tenant over a 6-month period. So we did have that in writing from the landlord and let the landlord know that we would be reaching out to the tenant to inform them that the landlord was setting rent in accordance with the ordinance and would be providing a notice to increase the rent to the base rent plus 3%. And then we let the landlord know also that we would ask the tenants if they wanted to withdraw their petition during that time. We did reach out to the tenants and inform them that we had received that letter. So at that point, it was resolved on our end, and the tenants stated that they would provide DCBA with a withdrawal. We did not receive withdrawal and ended up reaching out to the tenants again, just as to monitor this case because we hadn't received that form to see if they would be able to provide it to us. And on September 3rd, when we reached out, the tenants informed us that the landlord actually had set rent in accordance with the ordinance, so the tenants have been paying the $851.81. However, the landlord informed them that he would not be returning the overpayment back to them to use that as a deposit instead. So we ended up reaching out to the landlord to discuss this, and we were unable to leave a message for the landlord, and the call was not answered. And we wanted to provide the landlord with information that he had provided us a notice that the overpayment would be returned over 6 months per the ordinance, but that hadn't been done so. These tenants have been at the property for 20 years and stated that they had previously paid a deposit and shouldn't be responsible for a new deposit with the purchase of a property of another property owner coming along. And the landlord was also informed of that on the day that he visited DCBA and was counseled on the ordinance. So at this time, staff is recommending approval of the interim rent stabilization ordinance petition for noncompliance, case number RSQ 1908808. I did calculate out the overpayments, and again, it is in the amount of $1,740.95, and that was for the months of March through July 2019. If the landlord is choosing to return that back, the lump sum would be due on October 1st, 2019. If it's the 6-month credit option, as he previously agreed to, it would be $290.16, and then $290.15 for the remaining months thereafter. I apologize, in my hearing officer package, I submitted it as a start date of November 1st. It should be October 1st. Thank you.
Thank you. And the landlord did not submit a petition for relief from moratorium?
He did not. But he was informed when he visited DCBA that he did have that option.
Okay, thank you. I'm opening the public hearing. Actually, but before I move on, I know several people have come in since I started the hearing and originally swore people in. If you came in a little bit late and have not been sworn in, I'm going to ask that you stand at this time for me to swear you in. Thank you. Please raise your right hand. Do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you very much. You may be seated. All right, the hearing for item 3 is open. And Mr. Ruiz, I'm assuming 5 was written down on the speaker card here, but I'm assuming it should actually be 3. So you can come on down, Mr. Ruiz. Please take a seat. Good morning, sir. There is a timer.
Morning.
There is a timer on the desk. The green light will come on when your time starts.
Cuando su tiempo comience, va a ser la luz verde.
The yellow light means you have 30 seconds left.
La luz amarilla que tiene 30 segundos.
So you want to make sure you conclude your statement.
So, a este tiempo es que ya va a terminar de hablar o de dar su testimonio.
And then when you see the red light, your time to speak has finished.
Y cuando se mire la luz roja es que se acabó el tiempo.
Then I just ask that you state your name for the record before you begin.
Antes que comience. So, va a decir su nombre, indique lo que tiene que decir.
Miguel Ruiz.
Voy a transferir. Miguel Ruiz. So, ahora puede hablar con ella, yo le voy a traducir, ¿ok?
Ok, yo lo que quiero saber nomás de que cuando empezó a llegar a cobrarle la renta, me llegó a mí cobrando muy alto la renta. Y eso,
What I want to know is that when he came back with the rent increase, he did the rent increase really high.
que me cobró 1,200, yo estar pagando 827.
He's increased the rent to $1,200 when I was paying $827.
Y luego también me dijeron a mí de que él me tenía que haber regresado el dinero todo completo y nomás me dio a mí un cheque apenas de más de 300, ahí los traigo el cheque también.
Okay, and they told me that he had to refund my money that I had paid extra. However, he had just given me one check for $300.
Y también él me había dicho que tenía que darle un depósito a él del dinero que él me tenía que cobrar 2 depósitos, algo así me dijo.
He also mentioned that from the money, the extra money that I paid for the rent, that I had to pay some type of security deposit, that it was going to be 2 payments or something along those lines.
Yeah, pero yo no sé para qué depósitos de qué y luego
But I don't understand what that money is for, or what deposit if I already paid a deposit.
no tengo más que decir. Yo me dijeron que me tenía que regresar todo el dinero en un solo o en pagos, pero
And I don't have anything else to say. They just told me that he had to give me the refund in 1 full payment or in 6 payments.
no sé cómo va a quedar.
So I'm not sure how that's going to work out.
Mr. Ruiz, could you confirm how many months that you paid the $1,200?
Señor Ruiz,
Seis meses.
6 months.
Desde marzo
From March
al mes pasado.
until last month. So March through August.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Gracias.
Thank you. You may return to your seat. Now I'm going to call Fernando Lozoya. Good morning, sir. I think you've heard my instructions. Please proceed whenever you are ready.
My name is Fernando Lozoya. I'm the owner of 1246 East 81st Street in Los Angeles. I bought this property in March 29, the last year, the 18. Then when I bought the property, it was really bad. This is a property, just to clarify, this is a property I need to refinance my property, my home house, to be able to buy the house, that property. So I don't have experience with deal with these situations. This is my first time. So when I see the property in really bad conditions, that was in, like I said, March and the 18th. So the first thing that comes to my head is to fix the property before I try to ask for increase the rent. I paint everything, all the exterior, I clean all the exteriors, I fix the roof, all the rot wood, get rid of it, put a new fascia, put all new things. And that place that he lives on the 1244, he used to use the hose bit through the window to do his dishes in the kitchen. So what I did, I fixed the plumbing, and he can be able to do what he needs to do in the kitchen, same as in the bathroom, put a new tile in the bathroom, in the hallway and everything. I try to fix all the way, I don't say 100%, but something to be decent for people to live in on it. So in December, the last year, I spoke with Mr. Ruiz, and I say, Mr. Ruiz, I just bought this property, as you know. My cost monthly is like a $2,060, something like that. Plus, I need to pay the water bill and all of that. I said, as you see it, I try to fix everything to be decent, exterior and interior in the property. So to cover my expenses, roughly with the water bill and everything, like a $3,200 or something like that. And I asked if he can be able to pay me like $1,200 a month to be able to balance my cost, and I don't need to put money from my pocket monthly myself to be able to put the expenses. So in December, he said no. Well, I just go normal. I say, so in January, I go back again and I say, Mr. Ruiz, come on, you got to work with me, help me out to be even. I don't need to put my money. He said January, no. In February, he said, okay, so 1st March, I'm going to give you $1,200. He agreed. So, okay, great. So he said, pay me $200. I give a receipt in March. And we started from there up to 5 months. I think, according to my records, 5 months, only now 6. So, and all this problem begins because in the last, I think it was July, when the second building is 2 buildings, it's 3 units, they have a problem with the sewer line. So I called the plumber one day to probably fix it. It doesn't work. So I called the second plumber. They came with camera, with all the professional plumber. So he said, I need to go to the backyard. Perfect. I go around, open the gates outside to the building. I think I have the rights to go outside to the property. So I opened, he put the camera, he discovered it was improper connection for a washer machine. It's not I want to complain, he paid nothing for that. But when I moved in, I bought the property, he told me he was installing the washer and dryer. He was the person who was doing the maintenance, I think, in the building, the stairs in the building, he built that. So he does construction for a living, and he told me he used to work for the owner of the property because he owns another properties. That can be the reason why he paid low rent and the other tenants pay over than $1,000. I don't have proofs, but that can be the reason. The person who owned before, he passed away. I bought the property and the court and a probate, so I cannot get records from the past. I request him a record, if he has his sign and everything, if he has have a contract before in the past, he say no and he signed. That means he don't have a contract with the previous owner. There's no records about that. So after that, I'm sorry, just to finish with the problem with the plumbing. When I go to the backyard, him and his wife he showed up, he was not there in that moment. His wife was really upset because I suppose I break his privacy, which outside the property, I don't think so. It was not the truth. And she called the sheriff. She was really mad, really upset, but it was outside. I don't disturb her property inside the building. I don't do anything from the door inside. Anyway, I think I wait for 10 minutes, and she said, they're going to come. I said, wait. So just to clarify, they don't show up. And after that, she said, oh, they don't want to come. I think they discovered it was outside, so they don't have a right to say I disturbed them. But that caused me problems. And that's the reason why they go to Consumer Affairs, they claim, and they go all up after that problem, they come to all of this. Well, they receive a call from Consumer Affairs. I came the same day to Consumer Affairs. I don't like to have problems. They say, oh, you need to do this. So I try to follow all the instructions they said. The same day I sign everything in there. I'm going to follow that. And they say, you're going to have a hearing, you can expose your case, and they may decide to keep the $1,200, or then if not, you need to just charge. From that moment, they tell me, from this month on, you can charge only the 3% more, which it was to $851.81. That's what I did. And that's what the reason I'm here. I don't know if it, but I try to expose the reason why I increased is not like I forced not to, you need to pay me. I negotiated with him the way I see it, and he agreed. That's why I increased. And that's he decides, yes, he say, yes, okay, I'm going to pay you. Fine, no problem. And after the problem with the plumbing, I said, which caused me the problem, I need to pay. Actually, the problem was when he connected the washer and dryer, it's a 4-inch pipe. He opened a hole, and I have pictures for that, and he stick the 2-inch pipe into it, like a halfway. It was a 1-bottle can, like a Gatorade something. It was into the line, and it stuck there and clogs everything. So the other tenants, they have problem with it. They cannot use the toilets, they cannot use anything. So that's the reason why I called the plumber. I cannot prove that he installed the washer and dryer, but he told me verbally that. I don't want to complain about that. I paid everything. I just want to hear about the $1,200 versus the $851. That's all I can say.
Thank you, Mr. Lozoya. So you've only been a landlord about a year and a half?
I'm sorry?
You've only been a landlord about a year and a half, is that correct?
I don't understand.
How long have you been a landlord?
Well, I have a little house where I live since 18 years ago, and I have 2 apartments in there too. The same tenants, when I move in, there remains there.
All right.
For 18 years, and I had no problems at all up to now.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any other questions for you, Mr. Lozoya. You may return to your seat. And does the petitioner, Karen, does the petitioner have anything to add? No? If he has something to add, he'll need to come down. Go ahead, Mr. Ruiz.
Okay, gracias.
Sí.
Yo lo que quiero es que si puede conectar la lavadora.
What I want is for him to connect the washer
Mi señora está enferma de cáncer, ella.
because my wife has cancer.
Y ella, yo no puedo andarla mandando que vaya a la
And I can't be sending her to go to the laundromat.
Y de todos modos, su renta la tiene cada primero.
I've been paying the rent every month.
No más que él no pasa a recogerle el primero. Siempre
Sometimes he doesn't stop by on the 1st, he shows up on the 5th or the 6th.
Esto es todo lo que tengo que decir.
That's all that I have to say.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Ruiz.
Bueno,
He has one more thing.
y la lavadora, yo no la conecté toda para abajo. Yo nomás puse el elbow para tener el servicio. Todo ya estaba ahí esa lavadora.
And the washer, I didn't install it.
El codo para conectar.
I just added an elbow to get the service.
Ya es todo.
That's it.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, Mr. Lozoya, there's no back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. So, sir, you've come forward, take a seat, make it really quick, please.
Thank you. Just to say, as you hear, he agreed that he connected washer and dryer.
Oh,
So this is a building safe?
Mr. Lozoya, I don't rule about the wash. I don't rule on the washer
Perfect.
and dryer and the issues with the washer and dryer. And so if that's what you're here to talk about,
No.
we don't have anything else to say.
I request for a deposit. So after all this process, I ask for a record for the contract. When he say he don't have a contract, I give a letter. I give a contract to sign, to agree to have a sign a contract.
Oh, all right.
Decide not to write, and the contract says he needs to provide me 2 payments, 2 months in deposit. That's what I did.
Okay.
That's what the rule is. And he say he don't want to sign a contract, so that means we don't have a contract because he don't want to sign it. That's all I can say.
Okay, Mr. Lozoya, that which is not germane to
Okay.
what's already happened.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lewis, do you have anything to add?
I do want to add that based on the petitioner's testimony, we were under the impression that the rent overpayment was paid from the months of, for 3 months, I think is what I initially calculated out. So I do want to make a correction to what was actually paid. I calculated out that the overpayment should have been for $1,704. It actually should have been for $1,789.14. So that would be the lump sum payment, and then the correction to the 6 month payment option would be $298.19.
And that's a flat $298.19 for 6 months?
Correct.
All right, thank you. All right, I will go to my discussion of this item. The interim rent stabilization ordinance states in a petition for noncompliance, the tenant bears the burden of proving by a preponderance of the evidence that the rent increase was not in compliance with the ordinance. The petitioner has met that burden. Documents submitted by the petitioner, as reviewed by staff, substantiate by a preponderance of the evidence that the petitioner's rent was increased within the last 12 months in excess of the 3% allowed by the interim rent stabilization ordinance. The landlord has not filed a petition for relief, which I suggest you consider doing, Mr. Lozoya. If you put a lot of money into the rental unit, especially in 2019, since March of 2019, you would be able to show that what you made in 2018, you were not able to maintain that in 2019. And even if it's short-term increase, those can be considered. If your expenses, if you have to do major capital improvements on a property, there are vehicles in our ordinance that allow a larger rent increase so you can get back to making a fair and reasonable return on the property. So consult with Department of Consumer and Business Affairs staff about possibly filing a petition for relief from this moratorium. As far as the security deposit, that is an issue separate from rent. Security deposit is not considered rent. So under this ordinance, you, as a landlord, cannot keep the overpayment and put it toward a security deposit. You must return the rent overpayment. You must return the rent overpayment. It wasn't given to you as a security deposit, and because the previous owner, because that was not coordinated with the previous owner, is not the tenant's fault. So, Mr. Lozoya, your testimony is completed. With that, I am closing the public hearing. Given the evidence presented, I affirm the petition for noncompliance, case RSQ 19-08808. I direct the landlord to return the excess rent paid over the 6 months period, either as a lump sum of $1,789.14 or in 6 payments starting October 1st of $298.19 each. The landlord may continue with the rent at $851.81. And you are always able to file a petition for relief from the moratorium, and after a 12-month period, you would be able to raise the rent 3% again. My findings on this item will be issued within 20 calendar days. This item is concluded. I want to thank everyone who's come down for item 3. We're moving on to item 4, case RSQ19, thank you, 08443, a petition for noncompliance filed by Christine Lang. Ms. Lewis, please proceed. It'll be a few minutes, ma'am. I haven't called you yet. That's okay. If you just want to sit right in the front row, that'll be perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So this is for the interim rent stabilization ordinance petition for noncompliance, RSQ1908443. The petitioner is Christine Lang, who is the tenant, and the landlord is Tom Dunn, who is also the respondent. The petition date was July 19th, 2019. The address is 1237 West 87th Street, Los Angeles, California, 90044, and the petition is to request a reduction in rent in accordance with the ordinance 2018-0045. The property is located in the unincorporated area of West Athens in Los Angeles County, and it is a residential dwelling on a property with 2 or more units and was built in 1958. The key issues are that the rent was increased from $1,300 to $1,430 effective July 1st, 2019. The total rent increase is in the amount of 10%, and per the effective date of the rent increase, the July through September 2019 rent payments will be due by the hearing date, so that'll be a total of 3 months. The petitioner returned the proof of service to DCBA on July 26, 2019, declaring that a copy of the petition had been sent to the respondent on July 20th, 2019. DCBA sent out a notice of hearing to the petitioner and respondent on August 27, 2019. We also reached out to the landlord in this case. We reached out on July 22nd to contact the landlord and counsel the landlord on the rights and responsibilities under the interim rent stabilization ordinance. We left a voicemail for a return call, but that wasn't returned. The same thing occurred on August 12th. We reached out for the same reason and requested a return call, and again, the call was not returned. We also reached out on August 20th, 2019, again, wanting to counsel the landlord on the rights and responsibilities under the ordinance, and again, a return call was not returned to DCBA. I do want to make note that yesterday the landlord actually did reach out to DCBA just to try to inquire about the notice of hearing that was received and determine what exactly was going on, and stating that he did want to rectify the situation. At that time, I was able to counsel the landlord on the ordinance, as well as his rights and responsibilities under the ordinance. He did ask me to reach out to his paralegal, who I did not get a hold of. But I do want to make note that there was contact made yesterday, so since the hearing officer package has been submitted. At this time, staff is recommending approval of the interim rent stabilization ordinance petition for noncompliance, case number RSQ1908443. The rent increase in the amount of $130 increased the rent from $1,300 to $1,430, which is 10%. According to the ordinance, the tenant's maximum allowable rent should be $1,339. If the petition is approved and the tenant has paid the requested increase, the landlord respondent will need to credit the tenant for any overpayments above 3% that have occurred since the rent increase took effect. That would total $273 for the months of July through September 2019. So the lump sum credit option would be to return $273 on October 1st, 2019, or the 6-month credit option would be to return $45.50 starting October 1st, 2019. Again, I recognize the error in my hearing officer package. So again, it should be October 1st for the 6-month option. Thank you.
Thank you. And the landlord has not filed a petition for relief from moratorium?
That's correct.
And I'm opening the public hearing for item 4. And I'm calling the first speaker, our petitioner, Christine Lang. Good morning. Please take a seat, either chair, wherever you're comfortable. I know a few people came in late. There's a little timer on the desk there. When your time to speak starts, that green light will come on. When you have 30 seconds left, the yellow light comes on. When you see the yellow light, just wrap up your comments if you would, please. And the red light means your time has expired. Before you begin speaking, just speak your name for the record, and you may begin, please. Go ahead, ma'am.
Christine Lang.
Thank you. And what is your testimony today? What would you like to say?
About the overpayment and how he's not doing all the repairs that need to be done. He never have time to do the repair, but the only time Mr. Dunn has is to come and collect the rent or put a notice on the door.
And so for the last 3 months, you've paid $1,430?
Yes, ma'am.
And the landlord has taken the payments but has not given you anything back. Is that correct?
No, when he came, I had a friend staying, and he came and he said, well, I have somebody staying here. I have to pay 10% more on the rent for the guest that I had. And when I make some inquiry and called down over to the commission office, whatever it is, they said he only can raise the rent $39 annually, not $130. So then if they said I should proceed and file that we have a hearing.
All right. Thank you very much. I don't have any other questions for you, Ms. Lang.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. All right. The next speaker, Tom Dunn. Would you like a chair moved, sir, or are you all right? That's perfectly fine. That's fine. Good morning, sir. Please go ahead.
Okay, my name's Tom Dunn. I'm the owner of 1237 West 87th Street. Miss Lang had a bed in her living room for several months, and I didn't, I was curious about what it was for. When I came in, each time I collected rent, I come inside, sit at the table, and write the receipt. So, which I did, and when I seen a person who sleeps in the bed, and actually the month before, he's the one that let me in. His name is Craig. He told me his name was Craig, and I thought that that was Craig's car outside, the white car with a 8 on the license plate, but he told me that it was Miss Lang's car, which I subsequently seen her drive. And but anyway, after seeing Craig and the bed there, which has been there for several months, I informed my legal department to, actually I informed him what was going on, and he said, Mr. Bland said that you do a 10% increase on the rent, for additional tenants. So he subsequently issued a 30-day notice to her, for the 10% increase. And I didn't receive any notice or anything about the hearing, or what was going on, or any messages. But I did receive this notice regarding the hearing a few days ago. And I subsequently called, her name is Miss Shannon Lewis, regarding this, and she said that it was not a legitimate notice, which I gave her the number of my legal office, and she called, I think, and he returned her call several times, and so did I, but we received no response. And he proceeded to tell me that it was a legitimate increase, and he gave me the rent stabilization justification for these increases. And when I was talking to Ms. Lewis on the phone, she said I was only allowed a 3% increase, and Mr. Bland told me that the rent increases are 4%. So I just wanted to make that correction, and I have rent stabilization schedules regarding that here. So basically, as far as repairs go, several months ago, me and the guy, my handyman was in there making repairs, to the unit. A couple of years before that, we spent a great sum of money revamping the whole building, and making everything nice and making it, because it was vacant for quite some time while we were doing these repairs, and so we did, everything that needed to be done. Subsequently, after Ms. Lang moved in there, we went in to do some repairs to the ceiling, to the bathroom, and other places. But and we did, constant repairs to the doors because just about every month, the doorknobs were broken. I would say probably 6 times. And for each visit, but there were several, knobs broken each time, which we repaired. Okay, so when we went in to do the repairs, I think it was earlier this year, or it could have been last year. We didn't get a chance to finish because, we couldn't get in, and, I informed, Ms. Lang that we hadn't finished with the repairs, and we basically hadn't been able to get in there since. A couple of months ago, 2 or 3 months ago, she mentioned the repairs again. So I informed her that we weren't able to finish. And I called her and rescheduled to complete the repairs that we weren't able to do earlier. So and we were back in there. I had to give her a 24-hour notice to get in there because they wouldn't let me in on our agreed time. Why, I don't know. And she had a bed in there. I wasn't able to get in there since I gave her the rent increase when I observed her subtenant in there sleeping. While I was collecting the rent, and I wasn't able to get in there since. So when I went in there earlier this week, as we agreed to do some additional repairs, I couldn't get in. And she, I couldn't call. Normally she answers my call every time I call, but she didn't answer. Her son wouldn't answer. The phone. When I knocked on the door, and she, if he doesn't answer, she tells me to knock on the bedroom door, which I did twice. And he still didn't answer. I called Ms. Lang a couple of more times. She still didn't answer. So, and normally she answers. So I figured, well, maybe they don't want me to come in for some reason, Or maybe they want to move the bed. I don't know, But the bed, when I went in, finally got in there, was it day before yesterday, to complete the repairs. I started working on them, and then then I went back and I spoke with Miss Lewis to find out what was going on, and she explained what she said just now to me, and which is the first I've heard of it, And but Our position is that the rent increase is legitimate. You know, the repairs would have been done if we had access. And I had to give, to get in there, I had to give a 24-hour notice to get in there this time to start the repairs. And I also lost my handyman, you know, because he lost a day or two, you know, waiting around for her when we couldn't get in there. He went, you know, working for someone who's been working for me for 3 years or more, you know, and you know, now he went and got another job because he was off work for a couple of days. So, you know, my position, together with my legal department, is that the increase of 10% for additional tenant is legitimate. She has a bed in the living room, and she's a nurse, and she brings patients home. That was my assumption, that, you know, because this guy was sick, you know, that was staying there, the one I spoke to, and you know, she had, you know. If she didn't have the bed in there when I was in there last time, she could put it back. She's a nurse. She brings them in to, you know, to pay rent, you know, and because after I seen the bed there, I noticed she was paying the rent earlier. Still not on time, but earlier, you know, and you know, so, and I guess you know that. Our claim, you know, for a legitimate increase of 10% is legitimate. You know, if he doesn't have a bed in there now, it probably will be in there when I leave, you know, or, you know, because she's a nurse and she's going to be bringing people home, you know, and I haven't been able to get in there since I, you know, observed the tenant sleeping in the bed in the living room and the subtenant. And served her, you know, the notice of increase. They wouldn't let me in. I can't get in there. The first time I was in there was a couple of days ago. And I couldn't get in the initial time we agreed to come then. Okay. So what we're asking is that the rent, 10% rent increase stands according to rent stabilization. Even in the outgoing message at rent stabilization, it says that 10% rent increase is allowed for additional tenants.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Ms. Lang's going to be able to come back up and make some statements of rebuttal. So if you'd like to take a seat, please.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn.
Thank you.
Ms. Lang, you're allowed time for rebuttal if there's anything that you want to address that Mr. Dunn had said.
We had a next tenant who vacated the area 2 years ago, and all the work Mr. Dunn ever done on the apartment is next door. Every time I call him, even if he's next door and I stop by to say something is wrong, I'm busy. That's always his response. So he hasn't done nor asked to do any repair from the start of this year. This is the only time he ever asked to do a repair, 2 days ago, the 9th. And the bathroom is undone from last year, about January. The pipe broke. He dug all the wall out from inside out. Somebody can stay outside and look at me in the bathroom. He didn't even fix it. He put a curtain there, bathroom curtain in the slot. He didn't even put the concrete back and fix it. The ceiling, when the rainfall, it was leaking, he just covered it up with paint. I asked him about the blinds, the door he's talking about. He had the handyman working with him. I remember, forgot what is his name. And he went outside and slammed the door and the thing fell off. He never fixed them properly. And I'm even suggesting, sir, you can't do the job. Get somebody to do it properly. Because even times when he come to fix the door, you have to ask my son to do it, because he doesn't really do a good job when he's fixing anything. He doesn't. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Ms. Lewis, do you have anything to add to the testimony? No. All right. Thank you. No, Mr. Dunn. Particularly if it's a maintenance issue, if it's on the maintenance issue, I cannot rule on the maintenance issue, so it wouldn't help anything. Comments about the maintenance and what has done for maintenance and what has not been done for maintenance are not addressed in the rent stabilization ordinance, so I cannot make any decisions based on whether maintenance is done or not. I want to go through my discussion of the item. The interim rent stabilization ordinance states, in a petition for noncompliance, the tenant bears the burden of proving by a preponderance of the evidence that the rent increase was not in compliance with the ordinance. The petitioner has met that burden. The documentation submitted by the petitioner, as reviewed by staff, substantiates by a preponderance of the evidence that the petitioner's rent was increased within the last 12 months in excess of the 3% allowed by the interim rent stabilization ordinance, and that the landlord has not filed a petition for relief from moratorium. The rent may be increased after showing that your net operating income, as adjusted for inflation in your petition year, is not the same as it was in 2018. So it's all on income and expenses. So even if someone brings in 4 tenants or 3 tenants or 18 tenants, you must show that your expenses have increased to the point where you are no longer making a fair and reasonable return. It all depends on your income and your expenses adjusted for inflation. The documentation submitted shows that the rent increase was made within the last 12 months in excess of the 3% allowed by the interim rent stabilization ordinance, and as no petition for relief from moratorium has been filed, the rent increase to $1,430 at 10% is not in compliance with the ordinance. Therefore, I am closing the public hearing. Let me finish, Mr. Dunn. Given the evidence presented, I affirm the petition for noncompliance for item 4, case RSQ1908443. I direct the landlord to return the excess rent paid over the last 3 months in either one lump sum of $273 or in 6 payments of $45.50 each, starting October 1st. The landlord may increase rent to $1,339 starting after the mandated notice period. And the landlord may submit a petition for relief from moratorium at any time. That means as long as you can show that your expenses in 2019, that your net operating income in 2019 was not the same and was lower than it was in 2018, you may be allowed a rent increase higher than 3%, but you must consult with Department of Consumer and Business Affairs staff on the documentation you need to submit, because it is quite extensive, and whether or not you would be able to, whether or not staff believes that you could receive a rent increase over the 3%. My findings will be issued within 20 calendar days, and item 4 is concluded. I suggest at this time, Mr. Dunn, you consult with Department of Consumer and Business Affairs staff as to your next steps. I'm going to be moving on to the next item, but there are DCBA staff in the room who are more than happy to talk with you about what your next steps are. Thank you. Okay, we're moving on to item 5. Case RSQ1908405, filed by Annabelle Puga. Ms. Lewis, please proceed.
Okay, thank you. So this is for the interim rent stabilization ordinance petition for noncompliance, RSQ 1908405. The petitioner is Annabelle Puga, who is a tenant, and the respondent is Torres Property Management, who is the landlord for the subject property. The petition date was July 19, 2019. The property address is 515 Eastmont Avenue, Los Angeles, California, 90022. The petitioner is requesting a reduction in rent in accordance with the ordinance 2018-0045. The property is located in the unincorporated area of East Los Angeles County. East Los Angeles in Los Angeles County. Is a residential dwelling on a property with 2 or more units, and it was built in 1941. The rent was increased from $1,100 to $1,300 effective July 1st, 2019. The total increase is in the amount of 18.18%. And per the effective date of the rent increase, the July through September 2019 rent payments will be due by the hearing date. So that's 3 months of rent payments. The petitioner returned the proof of service form to DCBA on July 26, 2019, declaring that a copy of the petition had been sent to the respondent on July 20th, 2019. DCBA sent the notice of hearing on August 27, 2019. Now I just want to go over the landlord contact. We were able to make contact with the landlord in this case. On July 22nd, 2019, we did contact the landlord respondent. At that time, we did not make contact, but we did leave a voicemail for a return call. On July 25th, 2019, we were able to make contact with the landlord. At that time, we counseled the landlord on their rights and responsibilities under the ordinance. In this instance, the landlord was not aware of the interim rent stabilization ordinance, but understood that they needed to set the rent in accordance with the allowable limit of 3%, along with returning the overpayments back to the tenant. The landlord respondent did request this information in writing, and we did follow up via email. One thing I do want to add regarding who we made contact with, it was the landlord's daughter. After receiving the information in writing, the daughter reached out to DCBA again, letting us know that they wanted to provide a letter to us to rescind the rent increase, as well as return the overpayment across the 6 months. We did provide information for where this could be sent. We didn't hear back from the landlord or receive a letter to rescind the rent increase, so we made contact again back on August 5th to try to receive the letter to rescind the rent increase, and those calls were not answered. We made multiple calls on that day because we received multiple numbers when we, let me go back. The calls were answered, but we were redirected to call different numbers. So we did reach out to the different numbers that were provided, and then we followed up via email as well, but those calls were not returned. We did reach out again on August 20th to counsel the landlord on their rights under the interim rent stabilization ordinance, as well as try to retrieve the letter. We used all of the numbers that were provided to us at that time as well, and again, we did not receive contact. We did make one last contact on September 3rd for our call back, again to try to retrieve the letter, to rescind the rent increase, as well as counsel the landlord on their rights and responsibilities under the ordinance, and those calls were not returned. At this time, staff is recommending approval of the interim rent stabilization ordinance petition for noncompliance, case number RSQ 1908405. According to the ordinance, the tenant's maximal allowable rent should be $1,133. If approved and the tenant has paid the requested increase, then the landlord will need to credit the tenant for any overpayments that occurred over 3% since the rent increase took effect. In this instance, I'm not certain whether or not the tenant has paid the overpayment because the landlord had not been accepting rent from the tenant altogether. So I will let her speak on that. However, if the tenant did end up paying the back payments, then it would be a total of $501 for the months of July through September 2019 in overpayments that occurred, which would be, if it's the lump sum option, due on October 1st in the amount of $501. If it's the 6-month credit option, again, due on October 1st, 2019, and the remaining 5 months thereafter for $83.50. Thank you.
Thank you. And has the landlord submitted a petition for relief from moratorium?
No.
Thank you. I'm opening the public hearing and calling our first speaker, the petitioner, Annabelle Puga. And is that Julie Santiago with you? Let's just hear from the petitioner first, please. Thank you. Yes, please. Go ahead, take a seat. And again, if you could just state your name for the record before you begin your testimony.
My name is Annabelle Puga.
Go ahead, ma'am. What would you like to tell me?
Okay, so I live at the property 515 Eastmont Avenue. It was not mentioned here about I live in apartment 1. There's 4 apartments, right? Amongst other properties, there's 7 units, 7 renters there on the property besides myself. Everybody got a rent increase, but I'm the only one that came here. I'm the only one that filed. I've been living there 22 years, and so in July of this year, the landlord issued me and everybody on the property a rent increase. Everybody got a different increase. I'm not sure because I don't know how much everybody pays, so I don't know how much the increase is. But for myself, I was paying $1,100, and he wanted to charge me $1,300 effective July 1st, 2019. He gave me a notice with a 60-day notice, a 60-day notice about the increase, which was still over the 3%. And then I was known by television and different groups regarding the ordinance, so I was very aware that he was going against it. When July came, I went to go pay the rent, and I told the landlord I would not give him the rent. I would not give him his increase because he was charging me over the amount. I told him I was going to give him the increase only of 3%. By then, he already had been contacted by Consumer Affairs. So he told me since I did that, he could not receive it anymore. So, he talked to his lawyers or he spoke to Consumer Affairs. Those were more or less his exact words. So he didn't receive it. So in August, the same thing happened. I tried to go pay it. I tried to pay him that whole amount, but again, he said no. And I'm sorry, I went to go pay it, but he wasn't there. I spoke to his daughter over the phone, and she said that maybe we could negotiate an amount, but her negotiation was still over the 3% ordinance. And that time we talked to her over the phone, like I said, and it was my other daughter, Rachel, that spoke to her, but we had her on speaker so I could hear everything. So she said we said that we were going to talk about it at home regarding her supposed negotiation, which her negotiation, well, she didn't say an amount, but it still wasn't the 3%. And that was in August. So I have not paid anything since June. My June was the last time I paid rent, and that was the $1,100. So since the owner refused to take the 3% increase, I haven't paid July, August, and now September. Like I said, I've been there for 22 years with my family, and The landlord has, his daughter had said that she's claiming now that that we should have negotiated, so this, maybe we could have avoided all of this if we would have negotiated. And she's claiming that she could kick me out because I have too many tenants and pets on the property. And when I talked to her on the phone, she did not mention anything about the 3%, yet she was claiming that she could throw me out because I was going against the contract. I'm having too many people and having pets. I guess that's all.
Thank you, Ms. Puga. So it's 3 months total that you have not paid anything because the first 2 months the landlord refused to accept it. What happened in September?
Well, I didn't try. I didn't try to go.
All right. Thank you very much. I don't have any other questions for you. Now I'm going to call Joanna Torres.
Good morning. My name is Joanna Torres. Thank you so much, Ms. Lewis, for doing your due diligence as Ms. Puga. Yes, she has been a tenant at this location for about 2 decades now. Our biggest concern was the breach of contract. It's not about the privilege, but it's about the principle of right and wrong and fairness. And in this particular case, we tried to work with Ms. Puga because we, as a landlord, as a Latina, we understand that there's a crisis, a housing crisis. So we try to negotiate with our tenants. But at the end of the day, we also do it as investors as well. In this particular case, we do have a contract with Ms. Puga, and she did break 6 clauses of that contract. Clause number 1 is having more individuals that's stated in the contract. In the contract, it says that she's allowed to have 2 adults and 2 children. From my knowledge, as of September 10th, we know that she has 6 adults and 2 teenagers. So that's a total of 8 individuals. I know that the law, it's a 2-to-1 ratio, because as a landlord, we don't like the fact that she's creating uninhabitable, unsanitary conditions for the individuals living in that small space. So clause 1 is having a lot more individuals in the property. Clause 4 is the terms of the tenancy. We have in the contract that we are allowed to change the terms of the tenancy, which we did. We gave her 60-day notice, more than what it said on the contract. There is times where she is late with rent, but we don't take that into accountability because we understand that there is a housing crisis. So we're trying to work with our tenants. We're not trying to evict them or have discrepancies or disputes. We're trying to come, we try to mediate ourselves as well. This is a waste of everybody's time if we can't come to. And the other clause is, like I said, in addition to her premise that's very unsanitary, creating uninhabitable conditions for everybody that lives there, she also has a parking space. In that parking space, it's not used as a parking space. It's just used like a junk haul. So for us as the property maintenance, landlord maintenance, everything that we do in there, that's also costing us more money because the fact that we need to not only worry about, I think in the past we've had a lot of pest issues because of her 2 cats. I love pets, and I know that other properties that we own, we normally charge rent for the pets. So in order for us to keep with that, with the conditions of pets. However, in this case, we sent her notice that she's not allowed to have pets in there. She has refused to do anything about it. We tried entering the premise several times, but it's a little bit difficult because there is 8 individuals in that one small space. So our biggest concern is that. So when I talked to my father, Mr. Israel Torres, who's a property owner, we actually discussed on how we could sustain them there without having to go to court because they are breaching the contract. And the solution was to do a $200 increase for the 8 tenants. So this was allow us to be able to cover our costs with the 8 individuals that are living in that unit, but also to come up to a long-term solution. Because having 8 individuals in a 2-to-1 ratio apartment, it's not a long-term solution. So I know, I know that for a fact that if she were to lease out another apartment, there's no landlord that's going to allow 8 individuals to live in a 2-to-1 apartment space. It's just unsanitary, uninhabitable. Yeah, so those are our biggest concern with her. We would love to work with her. When I spoke to Ms. Lewis, I tried to explain to Ms. Lewis, you know, my opinion, my perspective on the issue, but Ms. Lewis was being very hostile. She neglected to listen to the facts that I also have, because I understand that Ms. Puga may have facts, and I also have facts as well. So this is why I'm here today. And I'm willing to do the 3% if Ms. Puga is willing to do what's in the contract, which is have 2 adults, 2 children, families grow, maybe 1 more, 5. I know that by law you could do like 1 more, but doing 6 individuals, 2 teenagers, that's a total of 8 individuals. That's just crazy.
All right, thank you, Ms. Torres. I don't have any questions for you. We do have one other speaker I need to hear from. I'm calling Julie Santiago. Again, if you could just state your name for the record before you begin. And actually, the timing on this is 2 minutes. This is neither the petitioner nor the respondent. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Okay. My name is Julie Santiago.
Thank you.
All right. So I think a lot of what she said was irrelevant to the issue here, which was 3%. And I'm actually backtrack a little bit and talk about the first time they demanded the rent increase. The landlord, according to, on the day that my mother was trying to give the money for the rent, she had told him about how she thought it was unreasonable and there's a 3% tax increase limit, and the landlord said, yeah, I know, and he still even completely disregarded that. He still asked for the increase. I don't know. It's not adding up. It just showed complete disregard. Okay, so on the issues that are being brought up, I think they mentioned uninhabitable. Well, that's kind of an unreasonable thing to demand that there's only 2 kids per adult. My mom has 5 kids. I'm the oldest. I'm 26. The next up is 24. Wow, I'm a bad sister. I know this. I think she's 25. And other one is just barely 18. They're minors, the other 2. Uninhabitable, wow. I could say so much about this, but I won't. There's other tenants on the property with even worse situations, and I'm not going to even address that issue. I'm not going to waste your time by going on.
Thank you, Ms. Santiago. Thank you very much. I don't have any questions for you.
Okay.
And if you'd like to go back to your seat, that's fine, Ms. Santiago. And Ms. Puga, you are allowed a rebuttal period if there's anything that has been mentioned here today that you want to respond to. Do you? Yes, you need to come back up. That way it's recorded and it's easy to hear, so it's all official.
Okay. She said that there's 8 people, there's 7. I don't know if she was mistaken. Last year I lost my mother, so that makes it 7. Like my daughter Julie said, I do have 5 children, and some of them are already adults. I have my uncle that lives with me. He is a senior citizen, and he is on medical equipment all the time. The garage he's talking about, we use that as storage, and we have 3 vehicles, and because I use my garage for storage, we only bring 1 vehicle inside the property. We park our other 2 vehicles in the street. Other tenants on the property have 1 bedroom, and there's 8 people. So her comment about saying that I had too many people in my property, it's always been like that since I've been there 22 years. And how is it she's saying that now and didn't bring this up before? And what about the other tenants? They are exceeding the alleged ratio of people allowed, and some of them, like I said, have only 1 bedroom. Well, one particular family has 1 bedroom, and there's at least 8 people there. So I think she's only bringing that up to try to get away from the fact of the 3%.
Thank you very much. I don't have any questions for you. Ms. Lewis, do you have anything to add? Nothing to add. All right, then I'm going to the discussion portion. It's always very important to me to hear from all sides, get an understanding of what's going on. The interim rent stabilization ordinance states in a petition for noncompliance that the tenant bears the burden of proving by a preponderance of the evidence that the rent increase is not in compliance with the ordinance. The petitioner has met that burden. The documents submitted by the petitioner, as reviewed by staff, substantiate by a preponderance of the evidence that the petitioner's rent was increased within the last 12 months in excess of the 3% allowed by the interim rent stabilization ordinance, and that the landlord has not filed a petition for relief. Breach of contract issues are not a subject within my jurisdiction under the interim rent stabilization ordinance. That's completely separate from a rent increase. The interim rent stabilization ordinance is very clear. It's 3% once within a 12-month period. That's all I can rule on. The breach of contract issues, that's completely separate. I'm not saying you could or could not take any action on a tenant who's broken their contract, but that's outside of my blinders. So in this instance, I'm going to close the public hearing, and given the evidence presented, I affirm the petition for noncompliance, case RSQ 19-08405. I direct the landlord to return any excess rent paid over the last 3 months, either in one lump sum of $501 or in 6 payments of $83.50 each, starting 1 October. The landlord may increase rent 3% to $1,133, starting after the mandated notice period. And if the landlord can show that there has been an increase in expenses such that the landlord is not making a fair and reasonable return in compliance with the ordinance, submit a petition for relief from moratorium. Absolutely, that's within your rights. My findings will be issued within 20 calendar days, and this item is concluded. Thank you all for coming today on item 5. The next is RR items 6 and 7. I assume, Ms. Lewis, that you will be taking items, you will be taking items 6 and 7 together?
That's correct.
Thank you. Please proceed whenever you're ready.
Okay, so this is for interim rent stabilization ordinance petition for relief from moratorium. And as you already mentioned, it's for combined presentation for cases RSQ 19-01475 and RSQ 19-02024. The petitioner is AASW Alliance LLC, who is the landlord. I do want to mention that we do have an authorized representative form, and it is Wei Chang who will be speaking on behalf of the landlord. And then we also have Wei Chang and Elsie Rodriguez. And then the respondents are the tenants at 11506 Overt Avenue in Whittier, California, 90604, and that's for RSQ 19-01475. As well as the tenants at 11517 Overt Avenue, Whittier, California, 90604, RSQ 19-02024. I also realized that I did not mention that this is a continuance, so I will go over some information that we went over last time, but when I'm going over the supporting documents that have been submitted, it will be very specific to those. The petition was filed back on February 21st, 2019 for the subject properties that I mentioned before. The petitioner is requesting to increase rental income in excess of the allowable limit as established by the ordinance 2018-0045. Both properties are located in the unincorporated area of South Whittier in Los Angeles County, and they are residential dwellings on a property with 2 or more units. The property located at 11506 Obert Avenue was built in 1962, and the property located at 1157 Obert Avenue was built in 1961. The petitioner returned the proof of service to DCBA for both cases on February 21st, 2019, declaring that a copy of the petition was sent to all of the respondents on that same day. DCBA sent the original notices of hearing on March 27, 2019. We sent the continuance notices on August 27, 2019. In both cases, the petitioner reports the following operating expenses. This includes mortgage, property taxes, property insurance, maintenance and repairs, payroll and salaries, pest control, trash, gas, water, and electricity. The gas, water, and electricity, I do want to add, is dependent upon vacancies in the unit. So it may be paid for some units while not all. To review and determine the maintenance of net operating income between the base year and the petition year, the petitioner must provide substantive documentation related to the reported income and expenses. The petitioner in this instance is also reporting to need to increase rents in order to qualify for a refinance of the property. The petitioner closed on the property in August 2018, which was 1 month prior to the implementation of the ordinance. And the petitioner is requesting to increase a minimum of $4,200 monthly between units, and that's to increase the rental income. The interim rent stabilization ordinance and implementing rules and regulation define a fair return as ensuring a landlord may maintain the value of the net operating income earned from the property prior to the regulation of rent under the ordinance and continue those earnings during the pendency of the ordinance. Net operating income is defined as gross income less operating expenses, and maintaining the value of the net operating income is achieved by ensuring the net operating income increases no less than any increase in consumer price index for the Los Angeles area, as reported monthly by the U.S. Department of Labor Bureau of Labor Statistics. To maintain the net operating income, the county compares the landlord's net operating income prior to the interim rent stabilization and at the time that the landlord petitions the county for a rent increase to ensure that the net operating income received when the petition is submitted has increased in value equal to the change in CPI. As I previously mentioned, we review and determine the maintenance of the net operating income between the base year and petition year based on the substantive documentation provided by the petitioner. In this instance, the petitioner does not have documentation from the base year due to purchasing the property 1 month prior to the implementation of the interim rent stabilization ordinance. So I do want to point out that the chart that we are looking at this time to look at the net operating income is solely looking at net operating income, not the maintenance of a net operating income. The documentation that was provided here, I mentioned previously what the expenses were, but the landlord provided us with cancel checks from September 2018 through August 2019, utility bills for water, gas, and electricity from the same time frame, as well as maintenance receipts and invoices from that same time frame, and that was for both cases. I know that I already mentioned that the landlord is looking to refinance the property, and that is the basis of this petition. This has been something that we've mentioned previously when presenting on this case. Mortgage costs are not considered to be an eligible expense for the purpose of determining fair return in the implementation of the interim rent stabilization ordinance. This is done in an effort to treat tenants fairly, irrespective of a landlord's creditworthiness. I do want to point out that the chart does include the net operating income with the mortgage calculated into it for your discretion and consideration. However, DCBA is not considering it in our recommendation. The chart here only addresses the months of May 2019 through August 2019, and the total that is listed is for the entire year from September 2018 through August 2019. As I mentioned before, this chart is only addressing those months as this is a continuance and we only wanted to evaluate the additional documentation we have been provided. So in this instance, the petitioner reports an operating income of $181,028.64 for the months of September 2018 through August 2019. We have also substantiated that income. Again, as I mentioned before, no information is available prior to the base year because the property wasn't purchased until August 2018. Because of the large amount of expenses that were reported, the property management company's expense report allowed DCBA to capture all the transactions related to the reported expenses that occurred over several months and that may have been split over time. Any deviations in the numbers provided to DCBA by the petitioner and what DCBA substantiated, I will go ahead and address now. So in May 2019, the reported income by the petitioner was sorry about that. I need to address which case I'm on. I'm on RSQ 19-01475. So in May 2019, we have a substantiated income by the petitioner of $17,038. And DCBA was unable to substantiate the petitioner's gas company bill of $136.22, and that was because DCBA was not provided with any documentation to substantiate that particular claim. And I'm sorry, I went over the income, but I didn't address the expenses. Please forgive me. So the expense was $18,361.38, and $136.22 of that was not substantiated due to not receiving documentation. In June 2019, we have reported expenses that were substantiated in the amount of $7,908.50. DCBA was unable to substantiate the petitioner's tenant screening claim in the amount of $22.48, as the documentation provided related to this expense was a duplicate of the documentation for an identical claim in May 2019, which we did substantiate. Additionally, the DCBA did not substantiate the petitioner's claim in the amount of $68 for parking costs related to filing this petition with DCBA, or the petitioner's claim in the amount of $40.50 for the cost of mailing copies of the petitions to the tenant. These are not eligible expenses under the ordinance, and they are not related to the operation of the property. In July 2019, DCBA has a substantiated expense of $8,692.45. DCBA was unable to substantiate the petitioner's legal tenant issues claim in the amount of $10,000, as tenant buyouts are not an eligible expense under the ordinance. Additionally, DCBA was unable to substantiate the petitioner's security deposit clearing claims in the amount of $377.20 and $2,344, as security deposit refunds are, again, not an eligible expense under the interim rent stabilization ordinance. In August 2019, we did substantiate the expenses in the amount of $32,336.89. DCBA was again unable to substantiate the petitioner's legal tenant issues claim in the amount of $12,500, as tenant buyouts are not an eligible expense under the interim rent stabilization ordinance. There was also a $500 claim for a security deposit clearing, and again, security deposit refunds are not an eligible expense under the interim rent stabilization ordinance. Okay, so based on the reported totals and what DCBA was able to substantiate, it has been determined that the petitioner has a net operating income of $22,226.78 for the property located at 11506 Obert Avenue. I'll go on and address the next property. So for the property located at 11517 Obert Avenue, which is RSQ1902024, the petitioner closed on the property in August 2018, again 1 month prior to the implementation of the interim rent stabilization ordinance. For this particular property, the landlord is requesting to increase the the total rental income by a minimum of $4,195 to $4,450 monthly between the units. There wasn't a specified amount, just a range provided to us. So again, I will go ahead and address the petitioner's operating expenses and what DCBA was able to substantiate in this case. Again, it's for the months of May through August 2019, as we're going over the additional documentation that had been provided to our department. The petitioner reported $115,417.50 in income for the months of September 2018 through August 2019. This has been substantiated by DCBA as well. Again, there's no information available for the base here, as the property was not purchased until August 2018. In this case, we did the same thing. We used the property management statement to capture all of the expenses and income, as well as the rent roll that had been provided to us to capture the income and expenses, and use that to go ahead and substantiate any documents that were provided to us. So in May 2019, we had no deviations from the expenses that were reported in the amount of $3,462.47. In June 2019, we substantiated a total of $2,273.97, which is less than what the petitioner reported. DCBA was unable to substantiate the petitioner's legal tenant issues claim in the amount of $10,000. Again, tenant buyouts are not an eligible expense under the interim rent stabilization ordinance. Additionally, DCBA was unable to substantiate the security deposit clearing claims in the amount of $400. Again, security deposit refunds are not an eligible expense under the ordinance. Lastly, DCBA did not substantiate the petitioner's claim in the amount of $40.50, which was the cost of mailing the petitions to the tenant. Again, these are all not eligible expenses under the ordinance, nor are they related to the operation of the property. In July 2019, DCBA substantiated $7,696.66 in expenses. In this instance, DCBA was unable to substantiate two of the petitioner's legal tenant issues claims, both for $10,000 each, so a total of $20,000. Again, tenant buyouts are not an eligible expense under the ordinance. Additionally, DCBA was unable to substantiate the petitioner's security deposit claim in the amount of $500. Again, these are not eligible expenses under the ordinance. Lastly, DCBA was able to substantiate in August 2019 expenses of $35,243.90. DCBA was unable, this number was less than what was reported by the petitioner, as DCBA was unable to substantiate a security deposit claim in the amount of $1,095. And again, security deposit refunds are not an eligible expense under the ordinance. Based on the reported totals and what DCBA was able to substantiate, we determined that the petitioner has a net operating income of $30,866.73. At this time, staff is recommending denial of the following interim rent stabilization ordinance petitions for relief from moratorium. Case number RSQ19-01475 and case number RSQ19-02024. The spirit of the ordinance is that a fair return is determined by reviewing the property owner's net operating income before and after the implementation of the ordinance. The purpose of this comparison is to determine that a property owner's return on their property is not negatively impacted and that they are not experiencing undue hardship as a result of the ordinance. The ordinance does not deem financial packages as justification for not receiving a fair return, and thus mortgages are not deemed as an eligible expense under the ordinance. As previously mentioned, the basis of this particular petition is to allow the petitioner to increase rent in order to refinance the property. As a result, DCBA believes the petitions should be denied with the constraints that the ordinance in reviewing net operating income between years were unable to take place and determine if the landlord is not able to receive a fair return, as no operation occurred prior to the implementation of the ordinance. We do want to acknowledge that DCBA does understand that it is within your discretion to make an alternative determination related to this petition. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have any questions for you. The public hearings for both of these items, item 6 and item 7, are open. This is a continued hearing. At this time, I'm going to call the petitioners, Mr. Wei Chao Chang and Ms. Elsie Rodriguez. Good afternoon. You will have a total of 10 minutes. Whoever would like to start, that's fine. That's completely up to you. And again, just please state your names for the record before you begin.
Ida? Before the petitioners begin, I did want to add that we did receive statements from the from tenants, and we did provide those to you.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Yes, hi, my name is Wei Chao Chang. I'm the managing member for AASW Alliance LLC. So we were here back in June. I think before we start, I did have some questions. I reviewed the hearing officer's package. These were posted, I believe, on Tuesday night. And one of the reasons why there was a continuance, back in June, where there were several items that, property tax, insurance, that were not substantiated. I still see the same items on the officer's packet. For example, the $3,423 for insurance in September 2018, various property tax expenses, and I just wasn't sure whether these were captured or not, because again, that was one of the main reasons for the continuance back in June. I received, I was in communication with Ms. Lewis. I received an email from Ms. Lewis at the end of July, I believe around July 27th, with a list of these items. I sent her an email with all the items, and I have copies of them back on, I believe, August 1st or August 3rd. Again, my emails will have the dates on them. There was an acknowledgement that she did receive them and she would be reviewing them. So that's why I was kind of surprised when I saw these again in the hearing officer's package. Because again, these are property taxes, these are insurance. I am obliged to pay these, and I don't have anybody else paying them for me. So I was wondering, I realize Ms. Lewis is very busy. I realize I've been inundating her with a lot of paperwork, if perhaps these emails were overlooked. So I think because kind of between them, there's anywhere from $15,000 to $20,000 worth of expenses. I did some quick calculation. There's $16,000 on one, and sorry, well, I'm not going to get into the math on the other one, but again, these are at least I would say $10,000. And I did submit to Ms. Lewis all the checks, all the expenses from May to August. And again, there were a lot of information. I applaud her for being able to get through them. But I did want to point out a few things, one of which was for 11506 Obert, August 2019, there was a $10,000 buyout, but there was an additional $2,500 that was not a buyout. Mr. Harry Blake, who spoke at the last meeting regarding the hot water issue, moved out and then filed a complaint with DCBA. So that was a settlement that was reached. He had demanded all of his back rent, all the rents that he had paid, to the tune of approximately $5,000. And we settled on $2,500. And all that documentation was submitted. So I just want to point out that $2,500 is not a buyout to Mr. Blake. It's a settlement. Whether it wants to be captured as a settlement expense or just we didn't get that rent, but that is an expense. And since the last meeting, I do want to, we've taken what you told us to heart. We have to spend money, and that's what we've been doing. We've been renovating, we've been fixing, we've been very busy at the units. Elsie, the manager, is here. She can, perhaps explain some of the stuff that we're doing. But, we are fixing up the units. There's tremendous expenses over the last month or two. And I did want to point out, and this was also in the paperwork submitted to Ms. Lewis, for example, in August, we had $30,000, $40,000 in expenses for each unit, for each building. That's only half of the expenses. We pay the vendors about 50% upfront. The vendor will receive the other 50% upon completion of the jobs, and they will be completed within this month. So there's about another $25,000 in expenses at 11506. I do apologize. About $20,000 in expenses in 11506 that would occur this month. There's another $25,000 in expenses that's occurring at 11517 that would be paid this month. And then starting next month, we will get our property tax bills at the end of September. So October, we will we're looking at probably at least $25,000 just on property tax alone for each unit. So, I know this is a continuance of the previous meeting, but since that meeting, since the, again, a lot more expenses have just come up. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. And again, I want to thank DCBA for being able to get through all this paperwork. It wasn't easy. Certainly, I've learned a lot going through it, but I would also like to point out, as I addressed before, I'm not a billion-dollar corporation that's trying to kick people out, that's trying to jack up rents on the tenants. This summer, one reason some of these stuff came in late, I work 14 to 16 hours a day. I'm a physician. That's my schedule, 7 days a week. And I do this when my family goes to bed. At night, in my office, I put these packets together. I've worked hard. I've saved all my life. And this is hoping to, for my retirement, for my future, for future generations. I realize there's a problem, but at the same time, I do feel like I am being punished because, I'm trying to work hard here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chang. Ms. Rodriguez?
Yeah, Elsie Martel Rodriguez. So what we are doing in each apartment home is pretty much renovating some of these apartments. In order for us to achieve rents, we have to pretty much gut them out. We're talking about removing cabinets, carpet, flooring. So there's a lot of rehab we have to do to the units. And their existing conditions is just not the greatest. So that's why the expenses are very elevated. Not something that I know that ownership wishes to do, but in order for us to get the next resident to move in, we have to do this. So that's pretty much what I want to add to, because I know we're talking about 25,000, 12, 13, but the units need a lot of work. And so that's pretty much where we are. And that's where the expenses come from.
And if I do apologize, if I might also add, I did explain this last time when regarding the units. The previous owner had owned it for 20, 30 years, and she did not do any maintenance on any of them. At our last hearing, a lot of tenants had come up and expressed issues with the units, whether it's piping leading to mold, whether it's carpets that haven't been replaced in 10, 15 years. Those are things that we're trying to amend. Several of them actually said they would prefer to have the old owner, but to me, it's just they want the old owner who didn't do anything, but I'm the new owner, I'm trying to do something, but I'm being told that, I'm the greedy landlord who's trying to kick them out. So I think, and then the other part about this, I think, when we do these renovations, like Elsie said, we are not doing top-of-the-line appliances. We're not putting in granite countertops. We're not, going all out. We are just getting these units back to basic, if you will, inhabitable conditions. Granted, with new cabinets, new countertops, et cetera, we're not going all out. If we were to go all out, I think we can easily spend, $25,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 per unit, and that's not what we're doing. We're conscientious of costs. We're asking vendors for discounts. We're seeing where we can, have a handyman do the fixing instead of, having a vendor do it. So we're very aware of that, but we're trying to address all these issues. I did express to DCBA at one point, it's almost like the tenants are unhappy with us, with us as ownership. We're unhappy because we're unable to, get a fair return. We're spending a lot of money. Again, as I expressed, I've dipped into my savings. I've dipped into home equity account to pay for some of this. I kind of told DCBA, granted half jokingly, but there's a part of me where it's, if it's within the hearing officer's power to, have the previous owner take the unit back, we're happy just to walk away from it. She can have the unit back, we can have our deposit back, the tenants can have their previous owner, we're happy to walk away. And I'll make it really fast, but the other thing that we had brought up previously was if we had just even walked away from the unit, just to get foreclosed upon, we would still owe IRS taxes because of 1031 exchange rules. So we are stuck.
Thank you, Mr. Chang. Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez. I have one other speaker to call. So, Alba Marquez. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for your patience.
Thank you. May I start?
Yes, please, go ahead.
My name is Alba Marquez, and I'm a tenant on 11517 Overt Avenue, Unit 3. And I wanted to really point out that Mr. Chang is mentioning that he is remodeling the units at the two buildings, and actually he's only remodeling the apartments for the buyouts. He's not really doing anything for the tenants that were still there. And my screen door broke, and I asked them to fix it or change it, and Elsie Rodriguez mentioned she would not change it. She had said that she was going to send maintenance, but no one has shown up. And then we're dealing with a lot of other stuff there. You know, they evicted one family that was there for about 20 years. And also, you know, we're dealing with a lot of issues going on. Ever since June, they have not sent cleaning crew for the building. They have not sent the gardeners, and we have been dealing with a lot of trash, a lot of, there's dog poop around the building. There has been poop inside also. We tenants have been trying to clean because they're not doing anything. And recently, the next door neighbor at apartment 5, she found a nest of rats outside her window by the bushes, because I don't think that they're even doing anything in regards to pest control. I don't think they're sending anybody. I haven't seen anybody doing anything of that. I did provide pictures of how things are going there. A lot of trash. Trees are dying because, you know, they haven't even watered the plants ever since they took over. So a lot of things are happening. Their maintenance crew have done a lot of trash. People that left also left a lot of trash. Tenants from units 6, 9, and 10 took the verbal buyout that they were offered by the supervisor, and they also offered me the buyout, which, you know, I did not accept. And I understand that there's 4 more units at 11506 Over Avenue which have been left because of the buyout. So they're only considering, you know, the buyout apartments. They're not doing anything for us that are still there. You know, and also Elsie Rodriguez did tell me at one point when I mentioned to her about my door that they're doing the bare minimum. And then it shows, you can see on the pictures all the things, you know, that have been happening. And they did, I had to call the health department for the carpet change. They changed my carpet, but only because it was really torn and old. And I had to call the health department because of that. Yeah, the previous landlord was in the process of changing the carpet, but that's when they sold the building. So he's saying that the previous landlord did not do anything. They were they were fixing the apartments, and they were taking care of the apartments. You know, we don't have a manager there. They do have a manager assigned for the 2 buildings, but she doesn't come here. You know, she's not in the buildings. And whenever we call her, she doesn't even answer calls. And she doesn't even come by to check on how the building is. All these things happening with their people that are remodeling the apartments, and they even took over our parking spaces at one point, you know, and there was no manager to manage for that. We had to call the supervisors to let them know they were doing this. We couldn't even park in our parking, assigned parkings. So there's a lot of things going on at the buildings that they're not saying. They're only focusing on, you know, what they're doing. I did provide pictures of they're already putting these apartments for rent even when they haven't even finished. And then Mr. Chang has an 8-bedroom mansion in Orange County, you know, and it's a big house, you know, and he's saying that he doesn't have money. He has money for the buyouts, paying $10,000 and then deposit, and, you know, they even offer me a U-Haul at one point. That was Elsie Rodriguez. And when I asked for their offer letter, she said that I had to give I had to tell them that I was leaving. I had to mention, I had to give him my vacating form or paper or whatever in order for them to provide me with that letter. So then that was all the verbal buyouts that they were doing. So there's so many things going on there that, you know, I feel they're trying to cover because, there's things going on that they're not doing, they're not fixing.
Thank you, Ms. Marquez.
Thank you.
And thank you for the photos. I did have a chance to go through them.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Lewis?
I do want to acknowledge that all documentation that has been provided to DCBA has been reviewed and substantiated and included in the updated hearing officer package we did provide to you. I also want to make mention of the buyouts. The buyouts allow for vacant units at the properties, and so that allows the landlord to increase rents to market rate with no restrictions from the interim rent stabilization ordinance, so there's no 3%. I know that Alba Marquez mentioned that there were 4 or so units at the other property. I can tell you that based on the documentation that's been provided to us, I am counting a total of 5 between the 2 properties, 5 vacant units. I'm not sure if they've been occupied since the documentation has been provided to us, but if these units are still vacant as a result of the buyouts, then there are 5 total. The other thing that I want to mention is that Mr. Chang mentioned the other half of his maintenance being considered. We did consider all of the maintenance that he provided to us based on the information that was provided, the invoices and the receipts. But again, we are only substantiating payments that have already been made. Therefore, the payments that will occur for the remaining half, we don't have any receipts or any invoices in order to show that payment has occurred and to calculate it into the net operating income. Thank you.
So the staff report, the current staff report, which I read, did mention about $7,400 worth of unsubstantiated expenses, insurance, and property tax for property at 11506, and also listed, and I'm just listing the expensive items here, over $16,400 of unsubstantiated expenses. That was what's in the staff report. So are you telling me that the $7,400 from 11506 and the $16,400 from 11517 were included in the spreadsheets that compared expenses and income?
Can you please mention where you're referencing?
For item 6, if you look on page 2, bottom of the page, the bulleted items, and on to page 3, the bulleted items. If this is, then this is the September 5th staff report.
Correct.
Then for item 7, that would be on page 2 of the staff report, the September 5 staff report, the bulleted items down at the bottom, and then also onto page 3. So since they're included in the report as being unsubstantiated, I would assume they are not in the spreadsheet, correct?
Correct. So whatever we received documentation for, we did substantiate it, and we did calculate all of the additional documentation that had been submitted. That's including for the May through August months, as well as any additional documentation that was resulting from the continuance. So if it's not, if it's listed here, it was not substantiated by our department.
So you're saying the property tax was not substantiated because the property tax is listed for both properties?
That's correct. If we don't have additional documentation for it, we didn't substantiate it.
All right, I'm going to call Mr. Chang and Ms. Rodriguez back down. And I don't want to see it. I don't want you to hand anything to Ms. Lewis right now. What I'm asking you is, but you are saying, Mr. Chang and Ms. Rodriguez, you are saying you have the documents now. that you have those documents.
Yes, and that was one of the things. So I wanted to make clear whether this was received or not. But if not, for example, for the property tax documents, I have the property tax statements. Some of them, unfortunately, at the time, I didn't have money, so I paid it with my credit card. So I have the payment form from the tax collector website,
Right.
and I have the credit card statements.
Okay, and because that's the key, and that was going to be my major question to you is why would you not provide documentation
Sure.
for $16,400 or $7,400 worth of expenses?
And if
Okay.
I might, sorry.
So that's okay, I understand. So if you have a bill and a payment that go together,
Yes.
I want you to give those to DCBA staff. So
Okay.
who knows what happened in the Ethernet or, on a desk. I don't know. What I'm hearing is that you have the documentation
Yes,
So-
I have the documentation.
where it's not just a bill, but it shows payment for the bill. That's the
Yes.
key. I can give you a bill for $20,000, but if there's no payment,
Yes.
I don't get
And
credit
I
for
can
that.
also offer Ms. Lewis, I'm more than willing to drive in again to review these in person if necessary.
That's what I would really like, because I'm restricted by the ordinance. It has to be
Absolutely.
a comparison, and when there isn't a previous year to compare to, I would have to have something to go by to say, yes, he's putting a lot of money into these, and so for the next year, I'll allow him to do 5% or whatever it would be. That would be the other thing. I don't know what it would be to make you, to get a fair and reasonable return. I don't know what that would be. But if you have matching documentation, I want to continue this so you have the opportunity to give that to staff. And she's a one-woman show over there when it comes to the hearings, and so that makes it very difficult for Ms. Lewis. I deal with planners, and I deal with 35 planners with their, it's every week we have hearings, 3 hearings a month, 3 hearing dates a month for the planners, and there are 35 planners doing cases, and there's always something. Nobody can be perfect as much as we might like to be. So I understand that you are in a bit of a pickle with your situation. However, administratively and as a bureaucrat, the documentation needs to be there for me to say yes and to make the findings as to why a yes would be allowed. Otherwise, it has to be no. So if you have the documentation, what I want to do is continue this so we make sure that Ms. Lewis has exactly the information that she needs, complete the evaluation, or if it's handed off to Scott or whomever else might be doing the evaluation, as long as everything is available. I don't want to make a decision today. I understand there are issues with maintenance on the property. I see that looking at the photos. Again, that's outside of my jurisdiction as far as what I can rule on. I can't say no because the maintenance isn't being kept up. I have to be honest with you, though. I look at these pictures and I'm a little bit alarmed by what I see in the photos. But again, for the purposes of my authority, that's neither here nor there. I'm ruling on a rent increase above 3% that the ordinance allows. I don't know how much more documentation you have or how much time DCBA staff would need to review it. Our next scheduled hearing date is the 26th. I don't know if that's enough time. That's fine with me that that's not enough time. How much time does staff, and I don't know if Ms. Gallegos, if you need to weigh in on this, how much more time would staff need to, because I really would like for there to be some sort of a meeting between AASW and DCBA to go over, really, is this everything? And no, I don't see your rental payment, so we can't take that. Yes, I see that, so this we can. So there's complete understanding. Even if it's a month, Yes, Mr. Chang.
Sorry, I do apologize.
That's all right.
Again, I thanked Ms. Lewis several times. I understand I sent her a lot of information. I absolutely acknowledge that. And one of the reasons this was delayed from February was some of the initial documentation I had sent her. When I went back and looked at it again, even I got confused. So I've been breaking them down. I've been trying to make them as simple as possible. And I do understand. I sit in front of the computer all day. Emails get lost. Emails may get overlooked. I absolutely acknowledge all of that. But kind of moving forward, I do have that documentation. But as we are also renovating as we go along, more paperwork is going to come up, and that's exactly what happened since June. At the June hearing, we were dealing with paperwork up until April, and during that time, between June to now, we're up to August. So again, this is just me saying it now, but by October 1st, October 15th, all these invoices would be paid, and I would have, I would be bringing that. Aside from the paperwork I have, I would also like to submit that paperwork because that can really substantiate our position.
So then we would be looking at probably the beginning of November. Because if you're waiting if it would be the middle of October, that's still not much time for DCBA staff to review any additional materials. There's what you have until today, what you have up until today, and there's what you're going to have the third week in October.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
So some of the information can be validated now or over the next few weeks. I'm thinking if some of the information can be validated now, more information will be coming in the middle of October. The majority of the evaluation should be complete by the end of October, because you won't have as much from the middle of October to the end of October to review. You'll have been able to review most of it before then, whatever Mr. Chang has now, going backward in time. I'm thinking the beginning of November.
Okay.
Should be enough time.
If we're looking at just reviewing the documentation that he has with him here today, our suggestion would be October 17th. But if you want to allow additional time for him to bring additional expenses in, then that's your discretion.
If Mr. Chang is willing to wait, I don't know how critical your time schedule is, but if you're willing to wait until the beginning of November, then let's do that.
I would like to wait just so I can bring in as complete of expense package as possible.
I understand that. So November 7th is the first Thursday. How does that look for staff?
That works for DCBA.
All right, and AASW, that would be Thursday, November 7th.
Yes.
All right, so we're in agreement then. All right, and so do we understand where we are? I want to make sure that any expenses Mr. Chang has, that he submits, are validated, that he's satisfied that he's submitted everything that he can, and staff, and I want staff to be able to have a chance to review it and evaluate how it fits into the puzzle. Okay, yes, Mr. Chang.
I just want to address a point that was brought up. We are renovating units, we are renting units, but if we're leaving feces everywhere, if we're leaving trash everywhere, that really goes against us trying to lease units. I do want to bring that up. We have water bills that was submitted. We have pest control bills. We have companies on site to work on these issues. But again, the foremost thing is, I would like to get these units at least. I would like to get, et cetera. And I can't do that with dirty, filthy units. That's what I'm trying to get away from. The last part.
I understand that, Mr. Chang, but I see, and you're not the, the, you're not, you're not, you're not the, you're not the, you're not the poop police. I understand that, but, but I see, and you're not, you're not the poop police. I understand that, but, but I see, and you're not, you're not the poop police. I understand that, but, but I understand that, Mr. Chang, but, but I see, and you're not the poop police. I understand that, but I see feces, I see, and the alley may be dumping.
And
as
for
far
example,
as I know,
when
that's
people
probably
dump stuff
dumping.
on the alley, when they call, we have to call, we have to pay for those pickup.
Right, and that's a major issue throughout the county, the illegal dumping of trash. But minor things like, I don't know about your water bill, but maybe those are just internal to the units, because I do see plants not looking so good. Pest control, I don't know what they're doing, but screens coming off, little handyman, little things should be taken care of, and it just helps your case. When those little things are taken care of, it just really helps. All right, I think we're set then. So at this time, to provide the petitioner additional time to submit documentation and for review of that documentation by staff, item 6, case RSQ 19-01475, and item 7, RSQ 19-02024, are continued to Thursday, November 7th, 2019. Right. This item is concluded for today. Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I have no speaker cards for public comment. Therefore, the DCBA hearing officer is adjourned to 10 a.m. Thursday, September 26, 2019. Thank you.
Thank you.